Alright guys, my name is Goblin, and today we're going to be discussing, is classic or retail World of Warcraft better for new players? So I think the first thing we got to establish, guys, is who are these new players and what kind of people are potentially going to consider playing World of Warcraft for the first time. I honestly think that it's more likely to be young people aged 16 to 25, a kind of age where, you know, you get to about the age of 16, you get a part-time job, start saving up a little bit, pocket money, and you can afford a gaming laptop at least, and afford a World of Warcraft subscription. And then obviously people just a little bit older than that, because obviously it wouldn't be incredibly young people at the age of 13, because they would be less likely to be able to afford a PC and actually do PC gaming and afford the subscription, of course, unless it's all paid for them by their parents. Personally, I got cut off at about the age of 14, and that's when I had to start paying for my own World of Warcraft subscription, largely by saving up my lunch money. This isn't to say that older people could potentially be trying World of Warcraft if they've come from other MMOs and stuff like that, but I think a lot of older people have probably already tried World of Warcraft and decided they don't like it. I think it's more likely to be younger people because it's the first time they've ever experiencing PC gaming as a whole. So who are these younger people? I don't want to get into a deep sociological discussion here, but obviously we are talking about the phone generation, you know, people who have grown up probably from the age of, like these days kids are getting phones at the age of 11. I didn't get a phone until I was about 19 or 20. So these people are obviously very different to me and the vast majority of people who watch my videos and, you know, who play classic WoW. For instance, if young people want to talk to their friends, they can just text them, instead of going down the back lane to knock on their back door like I used to back in the good old days. If you want a girlfriend, you've got a dating app for that. You've got like 20 different dating apps you can try out. Back in my day, we used to go to a shopping centre, Kendall shopping centre, and just go in cold, shouting at girls coming up the escalator. You'd be surprised, but it did actually work for some reason. But anyway, if you want a hoodie, you can just order it off Amazon Prime and it comes the next day, you know? But anyway, I think you get the idea. World of Warcraft's new potential players have much shorter attention spans. So let's evaluate the Shadowlands new tutorial island. I know it's not called tutorial island, but it's very similar to RuneScape, and that's basically how I understand it. First of all, as soon as you log in, you've got a great and easy to follow tutorial to learn all the basics of the game. You've got some awesome cinematics, you've got really cool voice acting, and overall it just throws you straight into the action. You know, you washed up ashore after your ship has been shipwrecked, and something's going on, something's happening. Okay, the combat and the animations obviously feel very modern and up to date with most other games that these, you know, younger people are probably more used to playing. You learn new abilities very quickly, keeps the gameplay very fresh and interesting. You're not stuck just spamming Shadowbolt for about, you know, 20 hours on end. Overall, it's a very fun and refined experience in my opinion. You know, leveling overall only takes now 8 hours, so you can get straight into the end game, which, let's be honest, is where the majority of the fun of retail is. All the great raids that you can do, mythic dungeons and everything like that. So the time it takes for you to actually get into the meat and potatoes of the game takes much less time. However, there is obviously a lot of issues with retail because the combat definitely isn't very challenging at all. From the whole leveling experience, which is a massive downside. Now let's look at classic WoW. It does have a tutorial, but honestly it's not the best in the world. It does the job, I'll admit, but it does involve a lot of reading, right? Young people are reading less and less. Whenever I get the train, I'm literally the only one who's there reading a book. I look around left to right, people are just always on their phones or their iPads or, you know, of whatever mobile device they have. Classic WoW has more mystery and exploration involved with the whole leveling experience because there's a much less hand-holding like on Tutorial Island. There's obviously a linear storyline for you to follow. You're guided from step to step exploring this island, which is still pretty good. You are still getting a lot of exploration, but there's obviously a lot less freedom. However, I don't think that's so much of an issue on retail because obviously when you get to level, I think it's like 10, then you can go and choose what part of the continent, what part of the world you actually want to enjoy, whether you want to do Cataclysm zones, Mists of Pandaria zones, and all that kind of thing. But overall, I have to admit, even though Classic WoW is obviously smaller than retail because of all the zones that have been added to retail, Classic WoW still feels like a bigger world. And that's obviously partly because you have to run around everywhere. You don't get a mount straight away like you do straight out of Tutorial Island. I think on Classic WoW, people are more likely to get lost and kind of lose focus and honestly get a little bit bored because, again, there isn't that much hand-holding. There's obviously no voice acting at all, so it's really difficult to really understand what's actually happening in the world, where the story's going, unless you take the effort to read the quest text, which nobody ever really does, let's be honest. You know, there's no cinematics or anything like that, so overall you kind of feel... I honestly feel more invested in retail when I'm leveling because I have a basic understanding of what the story is and what the characters are doing and what's going on, whereas in Classic you don't really understand what's going on unless you know your lore and take the time to read the quest text, which means again people are more likely to lose focus. The leveling is also extremely slow. Two of my friends who gave Classic WoW a go just simply quit, and they were like... And don't get me wrong, they've been playing World of Warcraft for a very long time, probably all the way back since Burning Crusade, right? But when they went back to Classic, they just totally lost focus and just couldn't motivate themselves to carry on leveling, and it made them actually appreciate retail World of Warcraft more. Obviously, the animations and combat in Classic WoW are very dated and they feel very sluggish in comparison to Classic. I honestly don't mind them because I'm nostalgic for them and I'm a granddad and I don't really care about graphics that much, but younger people who are playing really high graphically demanding games like The Witcher 3, and you know, because I'm a granddad I couldn't honestly name any more new games. Oh, obviously Cyberpunk, so there's games like Cyberpunk coming out, and then when you go back, say for instance you playing a bit of Cyberpunk for the day after you go back to playing Classic WoW, huge drastic drop in graphic quality, obviously. Obviously the great thing about Classic WoW isn't just about the end game, it's about going on an adventure in a new, big, fresh, brave new world and just getting lost and enjoying yourself. But other MMOs on the market have much better open world content compared to Classic. Like I said, you know, the lack of voice acting and the lack of cinematics honestly makes Classic WoW leveling feel a little bit bland and a bit dry, because when you do compare them to other MMOs, like other MMOs have much more exciting things happening, and so does retail World of Warcraft. For instance, about the time of Wrath of the Lich King there was opportunity to control vehicles and other various different interesting objectives, which made the leveling just slightly a little bit more just generally kind of interesting and a little bit fun, rather than just the kind of your standard, well, let's be honest, bog standard, go out into the world, kill 9 boars and come back. Just from my memory, in Wrath of the Lich King there was a quest where you can control a siege engine and you were like flying all these rockets and bombs on all these undead and just destroying like waves and waves of undead, and it was quite cool, it was quite fun. Obviously there's not anything like that in Classic WoW. So let me go on to some final thoughts. Overall, though I prefer the overall gameplay design of Classic WoW, a lot of people think that for some reason I'm a retail player who went to Classic WoW when Classic WoW was launched. I definitely wasn't. I've been playing on Classic WoW private servers for about 2 to 3 years before Classic WoW actually was released, and I haven't consistently played retail World of Warcraft since Mr. Pandaria. But overall I think retail is just simply easier to pick up for new players, especially when we're considering the younger audience, who are more likely to be these newer players. I mean, fair enough for older people, I think Classic WoW is probably more suited to them because there's less flashing lights and there's less crazy stuff going on, like collectibles and mounts and all that kind of stuff that's difficult to take a grasp on. Like Classic WoW is much more simple and like easier to understand, but these days gaming has become a lot about cosmetics, really. I'm going off my script a little bit, but you know, you've got games like League of Legends where you have different skins, and then Counter-Strike, different skins for your guns, and then there's stuff on Fortnite where you can get like loads of different armors, cosmetics, goggles, guns, dancing and all this kind of thing. Like the younger people who take up obviously the majority of the demographic of people who actually play video games really love cosmetics. Cosmetics has become the new way for a lot of video game companies to make passive income, like continue to create revenue after they've released their game, and it's just become basically an industry standard now that there's cosmetics everywhere. And retail World of Warcraft has a lot of cosmetics, and Classic WoW has virtually, well, not a lot really, because there's no transmog and there's not many pets in the game, and people don't really care about pets, and there's very limited amount of mounts, and the ones that you can get other than the faction mounts take about, you know, cost about an arm and a leg and in hours and hours of time to actually get. There's also this misconception that I think it's largely for people who are in the Classic WoW community They are very deeply invested in Classic WoW, and everyone in their guild only plays Classic WoW, and they all hate retail and would never even become, you know, go in an arm's reach of retail. And there's like this misconception that retail is an extremely bad game when it actually isn't, okay, because a lot of people still play it. Twice as many people play retail than Classic WoW, okay? There was this rumour that was spread around when Classic WoW was launched that it tripled World of Warcraft sub count, which first of all definitely can't be true because Blizzard don't actually physically release their sub numbers anymore, so we have absolutely no way of knowing whether that's true or not, okay? And most of the people who actually play Classic WoW on launch were people who already played retail, who were curious about Classic WoW, and they already had it there for free, so they went to try it out, probably didn't get past level 30 because they got bored, and the whole experience of Classic WoW getting up to level 30 made them appreciate retail World of Warcraft even more than they already did. This is why there was such an immense population drop-off. Like, the queues for Classic WoW on launch were actually ridiculous, really, really insanely bad. But they weren't really a consistent issue. Like, after a month you didn't really see queues at all, even when at the like hype of phase 2 or like a hype of phase 3 coming out. I think I was only in a queue of like 200 people at peak time, so there were, and I'm on a pretty big server, so there was a huge population drop off. And if guys, if you don't believe me, go and look at the realm lists for retail World of Warcraft and Classic WoW and compare them. Like, much more people actually play retail World of Warcraft than Classic World of Warcraft. But anyway guys, that's where I'm going to end the video there. My name is Medagoblin, and to my next video, ciao.